So hey there guys, welcome back for the second of this week's 3 videos for the Hexwraith Knights slash Black Knights. Hexwraiths slash Black Knights, sorry. So I've got the Hexwraith rider here, and I'm going to paint him similar to the horse, so that obviously he matches in, and not in a so much ghostly fashion, obviously because the horse is being used for the Black Knights as well. I'm showing you guys how I went about making it sort of compatible between the two. Obviously if I'd gone for a ghostly effect on the rider, I would have to do that with the horse, which then wouldn't match with the Black Knight. So all I'm doing here is similar to the horse. I've got a small mix of Inky Darkness and Abaddon Black and a small dry brush, and I'm just going over all of the darker areas here. You can see I'm mixing this up pretty much a little bit randomly, but it's you know, sort of dabbing the Inky, dabbing the black, and blend it together on the wet palette, wipe off the excess, and then dry brush it over. And what this is going to do is give that black a slightly blue tint in the sort of the highlight areas, those sort of raised areas. And then on top of that, I'll start mixing in a little bit of the Sotek green. Again, wiping off the excess and very carefully just sort of trying to pick the uppermost raised edges. Again, just trying to get slightly lighter in tone as those folds sort of become more sharp and a little bit more prominent. Alright, and once the dry brushing is done, I'll then go in with some Sotek green, slightly thinned down, and just pick off those more sort of raised areas. You'll notice when I do the Black Knight that I won't do as vibrant or as bright highlights, just so that I can keep it more towards a black cloth look. This rider, obviously, I wanted a little bit more of a spookiness to him to fit in with the Nighthorn army theme. So I'm going with a slightly brighter edge highlight into the sort of the robes or whatever it is you want to call that he's wearing. So again, I'll go around and pick off all those sort of finer edges with this Sotek green, and then move on to the next stage. Right, so for all the metals on the area, rather than get out another paint, obviously I'm using these paints between the Hexwraith and the Black Knights. I'm just going in with some Stormhost silver here. I'm not worried that it's, you know, a bit brighter than like Lead Belch or Iron Break or something, because I'm going to throw some Null Oil on it later on, which will dull the colour down anyway. So obviously this is going to go on any of the metallic areas, such as the blade for the scythe, the chains, his helmet and sort of sconce thing that he's got on his head, and the one on his shoulder, as well as any chainmail, plate armor, anything like that on him. This would all be done with the Stormhost silver. Right, so with the Stormhost silver done on all the metallic areas, I'm now taking some of the Morghast bone. Now I know that I mentioned this in the third video when I'm painting the Black Knight, that I say it's Ushapti bone. It's not, it is Morghast bone that I'm using on these guys. So obviously apologies for any confusion there. If I say Ushapti, I mean Morghast with this particular model. So yeah, going around all the bone pieces. Obviously with the paint being slightly thinned, it will take a you know, 2 or 3 layers. Now he does have a few areas on his body where the cloth is exposing a few ribs, so obviously don't forget to catch those. And then obviously his hands, his skull, and also the skulls with the flames coming off them. I'm assuming it's flames and not hair, but obviously he's got the ones on the end of the chains basically. So again, I'll throw some Morghast bone over them, get a few layers on, and pop back for the next step. Okay, so to try and keep this guy in with the spookiness of the Nighthorns, obviously he is supposed to be, or at least Games Workshop paint their version of him for the box art and that. He can be sort of ghostly painted. because obviously I want him more physical but with a sort of spooky effect. What I'm doing is picking out all of the little flames that are coming off of him with some Corax white, ready to put on some colour over the top, some vibrant sort of spooky green, just to tie it in with the spookiness of the Nighthorns. So obviously they have that sort of green ethereal flame kind of effect that I've got going on with some of the fire and that in my army. So obviously I'll go around and pick out all the areas. Now with this, I'm not too worried about some of the black showing through, as that's going to give some depth to the flames once the shade is put on. But obviously I do want to make sure that all the black does have at least one thin layer on, so that it's a bit more towards a dark grey. And then obviously the raised areas try and get a little bit more white, and that will help when putting the shade on later. Almost like a zenithal highlight, but done by brush. Okay, so for the wooden handle part of his scythe, I'm just using some dryad bark here. I'm not going to make this too complicated. You know, I don't need a huge amount of detail on a staff, so all I'm doing is some dryad bark, let that dry, and then I'm just mixing in about a 50-50 mix of dryad bark and some Ushapti bone, just to lighten it down slightly. And what I'll then do is gently sort of brush that down the length of the handle, so that it just sort of picks off a few little details in a lighter colour, just to give a bit of a wood stain streak kind of look to it. Okay, so with all the base colours now down, I'm just taking some Reikland Flesh Shade, and as I did with the horse, just putting this all over the bone, letting that get into the recesses and staining up the yellow a little bit. And then for the metal areas, the same thing, just a good wash with some Nuln Oil. I'll then obviously let this dry for about 10 minutes and come back for the next step. Right, so for the ghostly flame, keeping it nice and simple here, just some Hexwraith flame over all of the flame areas that obviously I painted white earlier. Give this a good little dollop of it, and that will sit in the recesses and tint the raised areas. And like I said, this is why I didn't mind some of the recesses being a little darker, as that will obviously darken this up when it sits in there, and those whiter edges and stuff are gonna just tint slightly a paler or a brighter vibrant green, and some instant Hexwraith look to an otherwise fairly dark model. Obviously I'll then let this dry for about 5 to 10 minutes before moving on. Okay, so once the model is once again fully dry, I'll now go back in and go over the bone areas with some slightly thinned down Morghast bone, and the same thing, obviously leaving the gaps in the recesses and some of the sort of shaded areas with the stained or tinted Morghast bone, and then picking off the more flat areas and sort of the more exposed areas with the thinned down paint. Once this is dried, which obviously doesn't take long, I'll then go back over with some Screaming Skull and pick off just some of those highlights, edge highlights and sort of more open areas, edge highlighting and things like that. On this, obviously I did miss the horns that I'm now doing here, so I'm just sort of touching them up, and I'll go in, put some Reikland Flesh Shade on them, and then do the same thing. So obviously once that step's done, we're very sort of nearing the end. Nice quick model, this one, so I'll pop back in just a flash. Right, and to finish the model off, I'm just using some Typhus Corrosion here, and obviously some Rise of Rust. just to give some rust effect to some of those metallic areas. Nice and easy. I did forget to hit the record button when doing the Rise of Rust, so obviously I can't show that, but you've seen me do it a few times now. If you want a quick 2-minute video, then let me know and I can maybe sort of start doing some very short videos on simple techniques rather than focusing on whole models. But yeah, rust effect, simple and easy to do. It's typhus corrosion, let it dry, and then dry brush some Rise of Rust over the top. Right, and there we go guys, one completed Hexwraith on his horse. So thanks a lot for joining me guys. I hope you've enjoyed this part of the 3 videos. If you would like to see the next part where I go and paint the Black Knight, then check the link in the top corner here, and that would obviously take you to the Black Knight. If you haven't yet checked the painting for the horse, then check the other link there, and you can go and take a look at that. So hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, give it a thumbs up. If you're not yet subscribed, hit that subscribe button, support the channel, help the channel grow. To those of you who have already subscribed, welcome to the channel. It's nice to see you guys enjoying the content enough to hit that subscribe button. But until next time guys, take it easy and keep painting those minis.